The priest was lying face down in the hotel hallway at 2 in the morning, and when John Wayne rolled him over with his boot, he recognized the grin before he recognized the collar. Wait, because what John Wayne did in the next 48 hours would force him to choose between the only tradition that made him feel like he'd earned something real, and the one director who could still make him feel 3 inches tall with a single look. John Wayne stood in that Hawaiian hotel hallway at 2:13 in the morning, looking down at Lee Marvin dressed as a Catholic priest, and all he could think was, Ford's going to kill me. Not Marvin, me, because that's how it worked. Wayne was the star. Wayne got the big money. Wayne's name went first on the poster, which meant when things went sideways, Wayne took the fall. The hallway smelled like old carpet and ocean salt. Somewhere down the corridor, a couple was arguing in muffled tones. Wayne's shirt stuck to his back with sweat, whether from the humidity or the 4 hours he'd just spent at the tiki shack, drinking with a man he'd been explicitly ordered to avoid. He couldn't say. "Bless you, my son," Marvin said from the floor. One eye open, grinning like this, was the funniest thing that had ever happened. He had a bottle of bourbon in one hand and was still wearing one shoe. The other was somewhere between the elevator and here. Wayne didn't laugh. He grabbed Marvin by the arm and hauled him up, hearing bottles clink inside the priest robe. At least 3, maybe 4. The robe smelled like cigarettes and whiskey and something else. Incense, probably, from whatever church Marvin had conned this costume out of. "Where'd you get this?" "St. Anthony's, $500 to the roof fund." Marvin tried to stand straight and failed, grabbing Wayne's shoulder for balance. Told the padre it was for a picture. He asked which one. I said, "The Bells of St. Mary Seds." He bought it. That came out in 1945. He's old. He doesn't remember. Marvin grinned wider. "You should have seen your face when you came around that corner. You thought I was dead. I thought you were drunk. I'm both, spiritually dead and physically drunk. Commitment to character, Duke." Wayne half-dragged him down the hallway toward his room, keeping his head down, praying nobody opened their door. This was the Maui Palms Hotel, tourist central. Families from Iowa and Ohio saving up all year for this trip. Last thing any of them needed was seeing John Wayne, America's cowboy, the Duke himself, manhandling a Catholic priest at 2 in the morning while they both reeked of bourbon. Look, you need to understand something about Wayne that most people never did. He wasn't the tough guy everyone thought he was. He was just a kid from Glendale who got lucky, worked hard, and spent 30 years playing heroes while the real heroes did the actual work. And that guilt, the fact that he never served, never shipped out, never saw combat, that guilt sat in his chest like a stone every single day. People saw him on screen and thought they knew him, thought he was Ethan Edwards or Rooster Cogburn or Tom Donovan, tough, unbreakable, a man who'd seen things and survived. But Wayne knew the truth. He'd seen nothing, survived nothing. He'd spent World War II on backlots and sound stages, making movies while boys his age, boys younger than him, died on beaches with names he could barely pronounce. His football injury at USC had kept him out of the draft. That's what he told people. That's what the studio told people. But the truth was more complicated. The truth was he could have enlisted, could have found a way. But he had a career, a contract, a future that looked brighter than any he'd imagined as a kid hauling ice for his father's drugstore. And he'd taken it, and it had made him rich and famous and successful beyond measure. And every single day since 1945, he'd wondered if he'd made the right choice. Which is why the birthday tradition mattered. It was the only thing that made him feel like maybe he'd paid some kind of debt, even if it was just showing up, even if it was just keeping his word to one guy who'd actually gone, actually bled, actually earned the right to forget. They'd been doing this for 20 years, Every May 26th since 1946, their shared birthday, Wayne would find Marvin, or Marvin would find Wayne, and they'd have it out. Fists, usually. Sometimes just drinking until neither could stand. Once they'd thrown each other in the Beverly Hills hotel pool, and security had to fish them out. But this year was different. This year, John Ford had drawn a line. Wayne got Marvin into his room and dumped him on the bed. The priest collar came off. The robe stayed on. Marvin looked up at the ceiling and said, "20 years, Duke. First time we made it past midnight without you hitting me. I'm thinking about it." "No, you're not. You're thinking about Ford." Marvin pulled a cigarette from somewhere in the robe. "He find out about tonight. He's going to." Wayne sat in the chair by the window, rubbing his face. He was 56 years old. His knees hurt. His back hurt. 2 years ago, they'd cut half his lung out and told him he was lucky. He didn't feel lucky. He felt tired. He told us to stay separated, and we did, for 3 whole days. Marvin lit the cigarette. "You remember how this started?" Wayne did, but he let Marvin tell it anyway, because that's what you did with stories that mattered. You let them be told again. Fort Pendleton, 1943. You were doing war bond tours. I was shipping out. We got to talking and figured out we had the same birthday. You said, when I got back, first round was on you. Marvin exhaled smoke toward the ceiling, and I laughed because I didn't think I was coming back. But he did. Saipan, Purple Heart, honorable discharge with a limp and nightmares that never stopped. And in 1946, Wayne tracked him down at a San Diego dive bar and bought that first round, and the second, and the 20th. Notice this, because it's important. Wayne made that promise to dozens of guys in 1943, maybe hundreds. Young kids about to ship out, scared out of their minds, trying to act tough. He told all of them the same thing. When you get back, first round's on me. Most of them didn't come back. Marvin did, and Wayne remembered. Not because he was a saint, but because every time he looked at Marvin, he saw all the ones who didn't make it home, and buying that round, showing up every year for this stupid, violent tradition. It was the only way Wayne knew how to say what he couldn't put into words. "I'm sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry you went and I didn't. I'm sorry you came back different, and I get to pretend to be you for a living." "Ford knows what this is about," Wayne said quietly. "He knows why we do this. Then why's he trying to stop it?" "Because he thinks I'm killing you." Marvin laughed, that sharp bark he had. "I'm killing myself just fine, Duke. You're just along for the ride." Wayne didn't answer. He looked out at the ocean, dark and endless. Somewhere out there was Saipan. Somewhere out there were all the islands where kids like Marvin had gone ashore and died by the thousands, and Wayne had been in Hollywood, making movies, getting rich. The war had ended 18 years ago, but for Wayne, it never stopped. It just turned into this. Birthday fights, and priest costumes, and trying to prove to himself that maybe, just maybe, he understood something about what those men had gone through. He didn't. He never would. But he kept showing up anyway. "Get some sleep," Wayne said, standing. "We've got a 6 a.m. call. We're not fighting?" "We already did." Wayne moved to the door. "You dressed up like a priest and scared 10 years off my life. If that's not fighting, I don't know what is." He left before Marvin could respond. The next morning, Ford was waiting. Wayne saw him the second he stepped onto the beach location. 5:45 a.m., sun barely up. Ford standing there with his arms crossed, eye patch dark against his weathered face, looking like he'd been carved out of the same rock as Monument Valley. Wait, because what Ford said in the next 5 minutes would crack open something Wayne had been avoiding for 24 years, and force him to look at the one truth he'd spent his entire career running from. "You want to tell me," Ford said, voice quiet and cold, "why half my crew saw you and Marvin stumbling out of a bar at 1 in the morning?" Wayne met his eyes. He'd rehearsed this. 3 different versions in the shower. None of them sounded good now. It was my birthday. I don't care if it was the second coming. Ford stepped closer. I told you to stay away from him. I told you 3 days ago. You looked me in the eye and nodded. Was that a lie? No, sir. Then what was it? Wayne didn't have an answer. At least not one Ford wanted to hear. You know what your problem is, Duke. Ford's voice dropped even lower. You think this tradition makes you noble. You think showing up every year for these birthday brawls means something, like you're honoring the war, like you're honoring him. I'm trying to be a friend. You're trying to feel better about yourself. Ford poked him in the chest. Hard. I was in the war. Real war. I got shot. I got this. He tapped his eye patch. I earned it. And you know what I learned? The war doesn't end when the shooting stops. It follows you. It sits in your living room. It wakes you up at 3 a.m. And men like Marvin, they carry it different. They carry it in bottles and bar fights and stupid traditions that let them feel something, anything, besides the weight of coming home when everyone else didn't. Wayne felt something crack in his chest. You want to help him? Ford continued. Then stop enabling him. Stop meeting him in bars. Stop pretending these fights mean something noble. They don't. They're just 2 men getting drunk and lying to themselves. He turned away, then stopped. And if I catch you on my set drunk one more time, I'll replace you. I don't care how big a star you are. Stop right here. Think about what just happened. John Ford, the man who made Wayne a star, who directed him in Stagecoach and The Searchers, and the man who shot Liberty Valance, just called him out on the one thing Wayne had convinced himself was honorable. The one tradition that made him feel like maybe he'd paid some kind of debt for never serving. And Ford had stripped it bare, shown it for what it really was. Wayne stood there in the Hawaiian morning and felt about 3 inches tall. He'd worked with Ford since 1939, Stagecoach. The picture that made him a star. 24 years, 14 films, some of the best work either of them had ever done. The Searchers. The man who shot Liberty Valance, Ford Apache. They'd built careers together. Built a language together. Ford knew how to get things out of Wayne that Wayne didn't even know were there. And now Ford was looking at him like he was a disappointment. Like he was just another actor who couldn't tell the difference between the screen and real life. Another star who thought fame meant something more than it did. Wayne had been scared of a lot of things in his life. Scared of failing. Scared of being exposed as a fraud. Scared that one day everyone would wake up and realize he was just Marion Morrison from Winterset, Iowa, playing dress-up in cowboy boots. But nothing scared him more than disappointing John Ford. And he'd just done it. Over a birthday tradition, with a man who didn't even need it anymore. Marvin showed up 10 minutes later looking like death. Ford took one look at him and said, "Makeup in 5. And if you're not sober when I call action, I'm replacing you with a cardboard cutout." The day's shoot was the bar brawl scene. Wayne's character and Marvin's character having their annual birthday fight. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. They were filming a scene about a tradition that Ford had just told Wayne to abandon in real life. The set was dressed perfectly. Fake bar, breakaway furniture, stunt bottles filled with tea instead of whiskey. The camera crew had been setting up since dawn. The lighting was golden, warm, nostalgic. Ford's signature look for scenes about friendship and loss. But here's where it gets interesting. Because Wayne had a choice. He could phone it in, play it safe, do exactly what the script said, and nothing more. Hit his marks, say his lines, collect his paycheck. Ford would accept it. The audience would never know the difference. Or he could bring something real to it. Something that might cost him. Something that would mean admitting Ford was right. That the tradition wasn't noble. That Wayne had been using Marvin for 20 years to feel better about himself. That was the choice. Safe or true. Comfortable or honest. The makeup artist, a woman named Helen, worked on Marvin while Wayne stood in the shade of a palm tree. Jack Warden came over with coffee. "Ford's furious," Warden said. "I know. He's also watching you." Warden nodded toward Ford, who was setting up camera angles. "He wants to see what you do with this scene. If you bring the real stuff or play it safe, what would you do?" I'd ask myself why this tradition matters so much to me, that I'd risk Ford's respect for it. Warden sipped his coffee. "And then I'd figure out if I'm doing it for Marvin or for myself." That hit harder than Wayne wanted to admit. Remember what I said earlier about the guilt? This is where it matters. Because Wayne had been telling himself for 20 years that the birthday tradition was about honoring Marvin, about keeping his word, about showing respect to a man who'd actually served. But Ford had seen through it. And now Warden was holding up the mirror. Wayne wasn't doing this for Marvin. He was doing it for himself, to feel like maybe, just maybe, he'd earned the right to play heroes on screen, to feel like he understood something about what those men went through, to feel like he wasn't just an actor playing dress-up while real men died. The scene started. First take. Wayne and Marvin circled each other in the fake bar, pulling punches, following the choreography. It was fine. Professional. Exactly what the script called for. Ford yelled cut and said, "Again. And this time, I want to see something that matters." Second take. Something shifted. Marvin threw a punch that came too close. Wayne's eyes flashed. For half a second, it wasn't acting. It was real, and Marvin saw it. He grinned and pushed harder. Wayne pushed back. The fight got faster, sharper. Then Wayne grabbed Marvin by the collar, pulled him close, and said something the cameras couldn't hear. "I'm sorry." Marvin blinked. "For what?" "For needing this more than you do." And then Wayne shoved him back and the fight continued. But something had changed. The anger was gone. What was left was just two friends, doing what they did, knowing it might be the last time. Ford called cut and said, "That's it. Print." After wrap, Wayne and Marvin sat on the beach. The sun was setting over the Pacific, turning the water gold and red, the same ocean that stretched all the way to Saipan, all the way to every island where boys had died, while Wayne was safe in California. Marvin pulled out a piece of paper, got offered a picture. Cat Ballou, comedy western. Sounds good. It's a supporting role. But if it works, Marvin folded the paper back up. "I'm not doing supporting roles after this. I'm going for leads, top billing. My name first." Wayne understood what that meant. It meant this might be the last time they worked together, the last birthday they spent on the same set, the last time Wayne could pretend this tradition meant something noble. The waves rolled in, steady, eternal. The same waves that had carried landing crafts to bloody shores 2 decades ago. Wayne listened to them and felt something crack open inside his chest. Listen, because this is the turn. Wayne had built this tradition, thinking it was about Marvin, about honoring a veteran, about keeping his word, about showing respect to a man who'd actually served. But sitting there on that beach, watching the sun go down, feeling the weight of Ford's words still pressing on him, Wayne finally understood what he'd been avoiding for 20 years. It was never about Marvin. It was about Wayne, his guilt, his shame, his desperate need to feel like he'd earned something, like he understood sacrifice, even though he'd never made one, like he deserved to play heroes on screen, even though he'd never been one in real life. And Marvin, who'd actually been there, actually bled, actually earned the right to forget. He didn't need this tradition. He'd probably never needed it. He'd shown up for 20 years, not because the fighting mattered to him, but because it mattered to Wayne. Because that's what friends do. They show up, even when it's for the wrong reasons, even when it's just to let someone else feel better about themselves. "Lee," Wayne said quietly, "thank you." "For what?" "For letting me pretend I understood." Marvin was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "You know what the war taught me, Duke? It's not about understanding. It's about showing up. And you showed up every year. even when it cost you. They sat there as the sun disappeared. Not saying much, just being there. 2 years later, Cat Ballou came out. Lee Marvin won the Oscar, became a star. $1 million per picture. When he called Wayne to suggest another film, Wayne said yes immediately. But Marvin said, "Duke, I don't do supporting roles anymore. You'd have to pay me what you're getting." Wayne couldn't believe it. "They're paying you $1 million. That's right." Wayne was quiet. Then he said, "Good for you, Lee. You earned it." And he meant it, because that's what the tradition had really been about. Not the fighting, not the guilt, just showing up, just being there, just proving that when you make a promise to someone, you keep it, even when the reasons change. They never worked together again. The birthday fights stopped. Marvin didn't need them anymore. Maybe he never had. In 1987, Lee Marvin died. Wayne had been gone 8 years by then. But before Wayne died, he told someone about the priest incident, about Marvin lying in that hallway, grinning up at him, drunk and ridiculous and loyal. And Wayne laughed when he told it. A real laugh. "That son of a bitch," he said. He always knew how to make an entrance. If you enjoyed spending this time here, I'd be grateful if you'd consider subscribing. A simple like also helps more than you'd think. 2 men, born the same day. One who went to war and came back different. One who stayed home and spent 50 years pretending to be the kind of man who went. And for 20 years they met in the middle. Not because they understood each other, but because understanding isn't always the point. Sometimes showing up is enough. And if you want to hear what happened when John Ford caught Wayne sneaking back to set at 4 in the morning, tell me in the comments.